Well, hey guys, I hope you're having a good day. I walk every single day, I drink water every single day, and I avoid sugar like the plague. I think I'm on day 16 or so of no sugar, and I feel good enough that I've gotten to the point where I'm not even thinking about sugar anymore. It's so weird. When you're eating sugar, you constantly think, God, I could go for that. God, that Snickers would taste delicious right now. Holy moly, those cookies. But after you've been away from it for a while, it loses its luster, loses its power. You know what else loses its luster? A marriage. Sometimes marriages are designed where we grow apart from each other. Now, don't get me wrong, some marriages are really good, and couples actually grow closer and closer. You ever see those old couples where they literally start to look like each other and dress like each other? The funny thing is, a lot of times they'll own dogs, and the dogs will start looking like them too. Have you ever noticed that? A lot of times people look a lot like the dogs that they keep. Very, very interesting. So anyway, I was watching this video and with my favorite guy, Jesse Weber, right? Law and Crime. And he was talking about this actor from Ghost Adventures on the Discovery Channel. His name was Aaron Goodwin. Apparently, guys, his wife, Victoria, tried paying a third-party hitman to eliminate Aaron. And in this video, they were showing Aaron in the courtroom because after she got arrested for trying to unalive her husband, he obviously went through the divorce proceedings. And it was interesting because he said, hey, whatever our marital property is, Judge, I'd like to split that 50-50, which sounds about right. He goes, whatever my personal property is before the marriage, I would like to have that all to myself, and she can keep all of her property. But with regards to my legal costs for my attorney, and I'm sure he had a damn good attorney, he goes, I would like to make sure that she pays for that because technically she's responsible for this divorce because she tried unaliving him. How crazy is that? She became a pen pal with this felon named Grant Amato. Now check this out. Grant fell in love with some chick over the internet, and he started spending thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars thinking that he was her boyfriend. I know this because I watched this on another episode. Anyway, make a long story short, he quickly became broke, and he felt like the only way he could have this woman in his life was to continually send her a lot of money. Kind of an addiction, if you will. But it wasn't like a girl that he could actually hold and stuff. She was wherever she lived, and he only had access to her online. So he's sending all this money. It gets to the point where he ends up stealing his parents' credit cards. Now, I believe this guy is like 30 years old at this time. And he's stealing these credit cards from his folks, charging up a ton of money. His dad gets pissed, kicks him out of the house. A couple weeks or a couple months later, his dad ends up forgiving him, lets him move back in, but he lets him know, hey, the only way you're allowed to stay in the future is if you never do this stuff again. Anyway, a couple of months later, guess what? He's caught doing it again. But this time, instead of leaving, he unalives his dad, unalives his mom, and unalives his brother. So he's rotting away in prison. She starts writing him. They become pen pals. And she ends up setting aside $11,000 so that a third person, some sort of hitman, I suppose, could hunt down her husband while he was doing photo shoots and filming for his show. So she was literally trying to unalive him when she probably could have just gotten a divorce and taken her half of everything. Isn't that crazy? Why do people go through the trouble of trying to unalive their ex or their soon-to-be exes, their spouses? Why does anybody do that? The reason I say is because I know there's a lot of unsolved unalivings every year in this country, and I'm sure there's even more around the world, right? But my thinking is you got to be really good to get away with it. And if your husband passes away, who's the first person that they question, as far as a suspect is concerned? The spouse. So it's like you're already going to be under the microscope. Why would you go through this? Kind of crazy stuff. By the way, in case you're wondering how they got caught, apparently one of the correctional facility people ended up finding these letters in this Amato guy's cell. Isn't that just nuts? This happens so much. I think what it is people don't like the idea of working for something and then going through a divorce and losing half of it. But here's the thing, sounds to me like Aaron Goodwin was the star of the show, and it sounds to me like a divorce would have made it where he was the big loser. So I don't know if she just got ultra greedy and said, I want everything. Do you guys think you could get away with it? What was that, Jesse? Bob, do you guys think you guys could get away with it? Do you think if you unalived your spouse, you could get away with it? Wasn't there a show or a movie about 10 years ago, how to get away with unaliving someone? Wasn't there some sort of program about that? See, that's the problem with TV shows and movies. When I was younger, I used to think older people were lame when it came to movies and entertainment, because this is what they would say. Tell me if you've ever heard an older person say this. I used to ask my older coworker friends, what do you think of this upcoming movie? Would you ever go see this movie? And they would say no matter how good it looked. And then you would ask them why, and they'd say, well, because I've been there before. I've already seen that movie. I just saw it in 1964. It was this movie. There's all these archetypes of movies, and they haven't come out with anything new since. There's only a certain amount of kinds of movies that can come out. I've seen them all. That's what they would say. And it's like, oh my God, you don't want to see a modern day movie? Well, that's how movies have become for me now. It's like all I see are these Marvel comic movies. Yeah, I know they make you laugh and stuff, but you get to the point where you feel like you've watched all the good ones because they're not going to come out with any more good movies. Maybe I am getting old. Getting to the point where instead of 5 or 6 movies every year that I absolutely have to see, there's like 1 or 2 every decade. Movies just aren't as fun for me anymore. You think you're happily married, and all of a sudden you're going through a divorce proceeding, and the reason for the divorce is because your wife is trying to eliminate you from the face of the earth. Supposedly one of the conversations that she had with her pen pal, Amato, the guy in prison, apparently one of the letters that she wrote, she questioned, am I wrong for doing this when I could just divorce him? Of course you're wrong for doing this. Like, what are people thinking? It just blows me away. Whenever people lose their life, there's usually multiple people at the funeral. What that tells me is that there's a lot of people that actually care about that person's life. They might not have been there every single day, but it doesn't mean they don't love that person or don't care, right? And when you just choose to play the role of God and you eliminate somebody from the face of the earth, the gravity of that is so strong, I don't really know how people can live with themselves. Does that amaze any of you guys? Right? I think when we're young, sometimes we're thinking, I'm so angry I could just unalive that person. But we don't necessarily mean it. And as we get older, we start to realize that, oh my God, if I'm going to ever do that to a person, it's going to be because my life is at risk, right? I'm in danger. You would never want to do that to people. It just blows me away that in this country, based on the TV programs I've seen through the years, it looks like most people get unalived by their spouses. I know I've said this a million times, but I think that's yet again another good reason to go on walks. When you go on walks, you can come up with a game plan, and I don't mean a game plan like, how do I get away with this unaliving my husband? That's not what I'm talking about. You can make a much better game plan. If you're walking and you're feeling good physically and mentally, you can tell yourself, hey, this relationship isn't working. I would love to walk away with everything and, look like this poor widow, right? But my goodness, getting a divorce it just makes so much more sense. I wonder what the numbers are on that. Do you think it's more men that pay hitmen to take out their wives, or more wives that pay hitmen to take out their husbands? I would actually guess, I think most people would guess women, but I would actually guess men, because men tend to earn a lot, at least in the relationships that I've known of since I was a kid. That might be changing nowadays. But back in the day, you'd have a lot of men that felt like they earned everything and all the wife did was, raise the kids, right? Even though we all know that's an important function, right? And I could just see them going out and take out my wife. Take her out and her sister too. Because there's always that sister that's annoying, At Laura Thompson says, tell me you're a gold digger without saying it. See, that's what's so crazy. When people are that successful in life where they've got their own TV show, I never saw Ghost Adventures on Discovery Plus. Maybe you guys have. I'm assuming that people on those shows make tens of thousands of dollars a week, if not more, right? If they're a super popular show, for all I know, they're making millions of dollars a year. But if you're making good money, you probably have a couple of properties around the country. You probably have a bunch of fans. You could probably instantly start your own YouTube channel and start making money that way as well. Just kind of makes you wonder, how come none of these people are ever happy in life? That's probably why I think some of these shows are bogus. If you actually saw an actual ghost, correct me if I'm wrong, but wouldn't you be thinking to yourself, oh my God, this means there is an afterlife. This ghost is an example of a soul that's neither in heaven nor in hell. It's kind of stuck here on earth, right? It kind of proves that there's a potential afterlife, or at least it gives the potential. Well, if you guys are going and doing this show and seeing some really creepy stuff, why on earth would you want to eliminate your husband? What if he comes back as a ghost and haunts you? Oh, well, maybe that's all BS and made up. Maybe that's why you didn't have that fear. Right, Victoria? At Resting Peace says, as her defense, Victoria will claim that a demon that Aaron encountered followed them home and took possession of her. Okay, so here's the scary thing. What if that actually is the reason? What if that is what happened? What if she does end up using it as a defense, not because it's a big fat lie, which it probably is, but what if it was true? I've seen shows on ghosts where supposed experts will say that these haunted boxes or haunted dolls, they can actually follow you home. And even if you get rid of the doll, sometimes the demon within the doll will still inhabit your house. And I've even seen stories where when the people move out of that house thinking, okay, let's just move away, the haunting follows them. It's almost like a cloud over their head. So as much as it sounds like a funny joke, Resting Peace, what if it's actually not a joke at all? What if there really are demons, which I think as a believer, we know that there are, but we look at people sinning and we say, that's on them. They might have had the devil in them, but they still made the choice, right? But what if she really was possessed? You would imagine they were bothering these spirits in this show. I could see one of them getting pissed at Aaron, going into his wife's body, coming up with these evil plans. I mean, that's how the devil works, right? So I guess everything like that's possible. But it's probably bullshit. She is going to use that defense though, isn't she? Melissa Sullivan says, oh, Aaron, exclamation point. Your show got us through the pandemic, Aaron. I'm so sorry for you and hope justice is served. So did any of you guys watch this Ghost Adventures on Discover? And I guess it was over the last 3 or 4 years. I think all those shows kind of kind of hit a plateau a couple years back, and as we all started going back to work and leaving our homes, we stopped watching those ghost shows. I think that's what's going to happen with the UFOs next. I think, if you were to really be honest, a lot of these UFO shows just regurgitate the same crap all the time. Like this couch right here, what if there's a ghost that comes with it? You know, you're taking that couch into your house and you don't realize that 5 people have been unalived on that couch right there, and all of a sudden it's in your apartment, and all of a sudden you've got poltergeists opening your cupboards, throwing dishes across the room. All the neighbors are like, what the hell is happening in there? And before you know it, demonic voices are coming out of your throat. That shit can happen. Oh my God, that reminded me of something. When I was little, my mom would watch TBN, the Trinity Broadcasting Network, and people like Benny Hinn and Kenneth Copeland and stuff, they would do their shows, and on the commercials of the show, they would actually sell little trinkets and stuff that people could buy. Like, I remember they would sell a bottle of holy water from Medjugorje, right, in all these places in Israel, right, where Jesus had walked. They would sell a little bottle of dirt for your $30 love gift or whatever they would call it. And I just remember my mom would take little drops of this holy water and she would go to all the mirrors and put little crosses, and it was like, oh my goodness, Mom, you're going too far. You're going too far. You need to go to church. Get away from that TV. I think what happens is some of these people, they start to convince people that, hey, if you sow a seed, if you give $1,000 to the Lord and Kenneth Copeland Ministries, it'll come back to you tenfold. And I think that's why a lot of Christian people out there are broke, because they constantly want to try to buy their way to heaven, you know? That's just my opinion. Is everybody like that? Of course not. Of course not. I mean, take yourself, for example. You're a Christian. You don't like to give money to anybody. I had a coworker one time, and my coworker, I saw her at Fry's because I had stopped working at this particular job. And she goes, hey, Jesse. I look around and it's this coworker, and she had like this wound on her eye where it looked like either a black eye or some sort of abrasion, but it looked pretty gnarly. And she goes, my husband tried unaliving me, and he tried taking my eyeball out of my face. Like, he literally cut the skin under her eyeball, like towards her eye socket. And it was just the craziest thing ever. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, stay away from him. And the last thing she said was, I'm going to stay away from him, no doubt. Fast forward like 3, 4, 5 years, I see her in the store again, and all of a sudden she starts talking about her husband. And so I didn't want to say anything like, oh my God, you're so stupid, right? But in my head, I'm thinking, my goodness, if your husband literally tries taking you out and you end up going back to him, if anything happens in the future, I mean, who can you really blame but yourself? But I think that some of us that are older, I think we grew up in a culture where some of us saw our dad beating up our mom, or they might have saw a boyfriend beating up mom, or they might have saw mom with a drinking problem throwing beer bottles and stuff at dad. You know, you have these different things that as kids we get used to seeing. And all of a sudden you're an adult, and your significant other that's supposed to protect you, honor you, cherish you, all of a sudden they're the bad guy, they're the predator. And you're sitting there and forgiving them and living in their house. I mean, let's be honest. Does it get any scarier and freakier than that? I don't know how a person could do that. That's one of those things where you might actually choose being homeless over living with somebody like that. That's just my opinion. I suppose I couldn't blame you if it's literally be homeless or live with somebody. But apparently he did the old, forgive me, I'll never do it again, I'm a piece of crap. And it's like, I don't know why some women forgive those type of guys, but my God, I think we can all probably count on a couple of hands the different men and women we've met through the years that literally let their spouses do horrible things to them. If you're a defendant in an unaliving case, and all of a sudden you're before the judge and the court when they're going over your alleged crimes and stuff that they're accusing you of, that has got to be the most embarrassing thing ever, right? It's like, if you do horrible things like that, you're hoping that you're never caught, right? That's the ultimate goal and hope, that you can do it and never get caught. And when you are caught, for them to bring in your family and their family, and everybody's just watching and listening to the horribly embarrassing things that you've done, oh my God, that's almost a punishment in and of itself. What also I find embarrassing about that, take it from the wife's side, Victoria. She's going to be trying to probably do her best to, not go broke in this divorce proceeding. But then on top of that, she's going to have to ultimately go before a judge to see if she has to, how much prison time she has to do for this attempted unaliving of her husband. But think about this, her family members go into all these court cases because they want to be supportive. But look at the embarrassing spot you put them in. Now they are all affiliated and family members of you, this horrible, dark person. Yeah. For all we know, she could have been validated if she would have done it the right way, right? Maybe he's abusive, maybe he's cruel, maybe he hoards all the money. I don't even know if she had any complaints about him. I didn't go that deep into the story. But I know one thing, you get a divorce, you can play the role of the victim. You try unaliving somebody, you can't really play the role of the victim anymore. I think we need to really make it where people know you do this crap, you're going to be in a lot of trouble and you're going to go away for a long, long time. Because if you keep letting people out after 5 or 6 years, like the 340-pound lady, every time I hear the word 340 pounds in the future, I'm going to think of the lady that got 6 years for sitting on the little 10-year-old boy, Just some of those things just make you shake your head. I hope to God they don't let this woman off with a 6-year sentence, but you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if they do. Here's the scary thing. You and I might have a 6-year sentence too. We might only have 6 years left on this earth unless you get your shoes on, hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button, and start walking with me every day. If you skipped walking today, we'll do it again tomorrow. Have a great night. I'll see you then.